Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Tango's down, Tango's down. We got him!
Did we get it?
We got it.
5 seconds. Shed. Driving. Looking up. 1 second to go for the win! He got it! The Cougars win it! Number one remains number one! Cougars reset. Jackson again. Finds it! And the Houston Cougars go from the first four out to the Sweet 16.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby!
Yes! Welcome to the Scott Holland Podcast, Willie Fritz Emergency Edition. Normally we come on here, I think it's kind of our deal on this show, to come on here and talk about a lot of different Houston Cougar topics. I think we are completionists, we are people I think do a great job covering Houston Cougar athletics from top to bottom. And we actually, in this coming week, we have a number of non-football stories that we're going to talk plenty about here. But today, it is exclusively Willie Fritz, officially as of this morning here on Sunday, December 3rd, the 16th head football coach of the University of Houston's team. Dustin, what was your instant reaction? We had kind of all three of us had some lead up. Like, it wasn't like, oh my God, out of left field, Willie Fritz. It's reported by pretty reputable journalists prior to that, but still, once you saw it official, like, what were your first feelings seeing the next Cougar head football coach?
I mean, it was just kind of surreal, right? Most fans who at the end of the season are a little bit annoyed with their head football coach and kind of wish their school would move on. Don't both A, get to see that coach shown the door, and then B, get their like number one choice hired immediately, summarily by the school after that. So I remember kind of having these dueling feelings of like, you know, A, like that's awesome. That's awesome that we got the guy that we wanted. I'm really excited about that. And on the other hand, you go, okay, he's got a big job in front of him, right? There's a lot in his plate right now in terms of everything that this guy needs to do in the next couple days, couple weeks, couple months, just to get this program kind of righted and heading in the right direction for the 2024 season. So, I think it took very little time for me to kind of come like back to earth and go, okay, yeah, this guy's a program builder. It might take him a few years to build this program because of, where we're at and everything like that. But, yeah, man, it's every coaching hire is a bit of a roll of the dice, but I think this is about as high probability a roll of the dice as you can have. So very excited to see how everything plays out.
Bobby, you were a Willie Fritz guy when we were doing that premium podcast before we even like believed it was highly possible Dan was fired. So we'll let you bask in the glow of that for at least a few more moments here. How are you feeling about Willie Fritz?
Couldn't be more excited, Sam. Just couldn't be more excited that the guy I wanted is here. I think I said it on Twitter, X, whatever. I think Twitter. I said it there that I haven't been this excited in a singular Cougar moment. Actually, I'm sorry. I take that back because the Peach Bowl was bigger than this, but Herman putting the hat on the field after Ohio State wins, throwing up the Cougar ball. We got the guy we wanted. We got our number one choice. We got the guy who we set out. We said we wanted this guy and we got him. And so that doesn't happen for us very often, right? Like, I mean, let's be honest. I think Major was a guy who
it was a guy like that is definitely
yeah. It
was a guy, correct.
It was trying to be a continuation of the Herman years. You kind of did that, but I don't think any of us were super duper excited about it. And with Holgorsen, I think that was such a shock to everybody that we didn't really grasp the idea that we just took a P5 coach. But then at the same time, we were kind of like, yeah, he's been okay at West Virginia. I think we were more excited that we took a P5 coach rather than the coach we were getting. And now we're excited about the coach we're getting. Herman, when we hired him, Herman was like the top guy, the top assistant that a lot of programs wanted. And we knew a lot of G5 programs knew they wanted him. And we knew we got our guy. We knew when we started that process, like, holy moly, we got the guy that we absolutely wanted in all of this. No compromise with it. And it feels the same way this year. And really there were some jobs that opened up that you kind of go, hey, maybe maybe we're not going to be the top spot. We're not going to get our top guy. A&M, maybe had gotten Traylor, right? We thought maybe then Baylor may have gotten one of the two guys. If they go the way that we probably thought they might go, we don't end up with Willie Fritz. We don't end up with Traylor. And we're in a situation where we're grabbing a good candidate, but probably our third or fourth candidate. We got our top guy. We got either our top guy or our top two guys. And we were held back by money with UTSA. But other than that, I'm beyond excited.
Yeah, I think we haven't seen a market consensus that U of H made an absolute home run hire like this since, like you said, Bobby, since the Tom Herman hire. And I think that doesn't win you any games. That doesn't change anything materially about the 2024 season. If I had to guess, I would love to be wrong on this one. I'd love to be wrong on this one more than I'd love to be wrong about a lot of the stuff I've said in this show, but don't think this is going to be a Tom Herman 13-1 kind of situation. We're going to probably take a humbling look at some point during the show what awaits Willie Fritz in 2024. Spoiler alert, it's not easy. It's not a schedule that winning a lot of games against is going to be an easy task for the first year head man. But, and I think we're going to get to his specific bio, but like, it's a guy who's won at every level. It's not a guy who's gone to, heavily resourced programs and continued. You could go to several different programs that Willie Fritz has been and make the case that nearly every one of them that Willie Fritz is either maybe their best coach in modern history or somebody who was a positive, transformative coach in an important period. That I think is just, it's a really incredible. It's a guy who's won 67% of his games and he's coached nearly 400 of them, in college. Like that is a proven football coach. And that's just what we needed. It was very clear, like we've talked about time and time again, that things had irreparably soured between this fan base and the previous staff here. So I think we were just excited to get a clean slate there. And like you said, Bobby, I think we would be similarly as positive if Jeff Traylor was the guy we were talking about, right now. I think if either one of those choices get made, you're going to have your outliers here and there. They're just like, I hate Willie Fritz because I don't have any conception of Tulane football being really terrible before he got there. I hate Jeff Traylor because he didn't recruit Frank Harris, ignoring the fact that he did a great job putting great stuff around Frank Harris when he was there.
Putting Frank Harris in a position to
exactly
be as successful as Frank Harris has been.
Yeah, kind of a roundabout way of saying that I think both guys would have been very good hires, and I think both guys would have been really the only candidates that this fan base would 100%. Like, I'm not saying there are other candidates that we couldn't have eventually grown to like. I mean, we talked about 10 of them in the instant react to Holgorsen getting fired, and I think to varying degrees we're like, okay, like all 10 of them are better than having Dana Holgorsen back for 2024, but like the remaining 8 wouldn't have gotten nearly as positive reaction as Traylor or the guy we're talking about as the Houston Cougar head football coach. So, guys, you know what else is guaranteed to get a positive reaction?
What's that, Sam?
The incredibly comfortable wearables at Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com. Supporters here on the show, got to mention our friends there. You can obviously partake in just the awesome codes they have for important times of the year, like their Cyber Monday, Black Friday, which is now past, but there's a good chance you're going to find a good deal at Charlie Hustle. But even on the weeks, I believe you Christians call this ordinary time, Bobby. Even in the ordinary time parts of the year, although I know we're getting to Advent now and all that fun stuff.
Today is the first Sunday of Advent, so so we have reached that. So
I learned something today. But
me too.
even when Charlie Hustle isn't running one of their many incredible promos, you can always use our promo code SHP15, SHP15, like Scott and Holland podcast. You're going to save 15% on an incredibly comfortable selection of Houston Cougar t-shirts, crew necks, and hoodies. Just awesome stuff. I was out doing athletic stuff yesterday I think it was 45 degrees when I first started playing out there. And I was rocking for my first match, my Houston Cougar Charlie Hustle crew neck. Did a great job being breathable while I was doing something athletic, but also being incredibly comfortable. Really great clothing, really great designs. They're going to catch the eye of Cougar fans and non-Cougar fans wherever you go. So that's Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com. So I wanted to, I think we generally, like when we talk about things, whether it's a game, whether it's a news event, we kind of talk about how it happened. So I want you guys to jump in here, if you feel like ignoring something or as you see fit, but figured we'd at least talk about the news as it's come to us in the last, I think this would be 5 days since we potted about it. We talked Tuesday night on our regular show about where the news was then. So when we were last together, the state of the news around this vacancy was UTSA head coach Jeff Traylor. He had just interviewed for the job. You saw other names thrown out there, maybe names that really didn't end up in any serious way being connected to the job. Shout out to Randy McElvoy, who through this weekend was still mentioning Cliff Kingsbury. It's just like, my guy.
Yesterday.
It was yesterday.
It was
Thank you.
yesterday late.
Like Cliff Kingsbury's also there. And I'm like, is he? Is he though? Like, I mean, he is an adult that can put in an application to a public school position. I mean, like the three of us could have put in an application for the job. It has to be publicly listed. Doesn't mean either of us or Cliff Kingsbury has snowball's chance in hell, but I guess neither of us have, any of us have agents that, Randy McElvoy is trying to curry favor with. So I guess we got to work on that between now and the next cycle.
And to be fair, Cliff had a better chance of getting the job than we did, but, not much better.
Not by a huge amount.
Not by a huge amount.
Yeah.
Not that a sports reporter should be mentioning.
Yeah, just like, come on, buddy. Is getting tight with Cliff's representation that important to you? Whatever. I guess I'm not the Channel 2 news sports director, so I can't speak on his job there. But I think by Thursday or somewhere in the later point of this past week, I think it was becoming pretty clear that, okay, if U of H was going to name Jeff Traylor, or U of H really was just like, oh yeah, Jeff Traylor's the guy, probably would have announced it. And the news consistently seemed to be that U of H wasn't going to do anything until the weekend. They mentioned, Willie Fritz obviously playing in the AAC championship game with Tulane against SMU. I think also wouldn't say this guy was a super credible, but I would say this guy was a more credible candidate than Cliff Kingsbury. Also, I saw a couple token mentions of Barry Odom, who was playing in the Mountain West championship game with UNLV against Boise on Saturday as well. So that kind of became the consistent picture. And I think it was a San Antonio TV news guy, Don Harris. He wasn't the first one to break the hire, but he was the first professional media person to say on the record what ended up actually happening, that U of H was planning on naming Willie Fritz, Tulane's head coach, the Houston coach, sometime after Tulane played in the AAC championship game. Saturday afternoon, you had Joseph Duarte and Sam Kahn both reporting that U of H was very close to hiring Fritz. And the timing of that right before Tulane's conference championship game sucks. I think we all agree on that. And that's not a slight to Duarte or Kahn, because those guys are professional journalists whose specific job is to break the story as soon as they have confirmed its veracity.
You have to.
Yeah, of
you
course.
You have to.
Yeah. But we've been on the other side of that generally. And I think I would feel worse if Tulane hadn't won a conference title last year, hadn't gone to the Cotton Bowl and won a very memorable game last year. And I'm not saying the Sumlin to A&M stuff, just to use, I think, a decent parallel on our end. I'm not saying that wouldn't have hurt, regardless of context. But if 2011 was U of H coming off I guess would have been the time BCS bowl win and a conference title and this big memorable season, and 2011 was the second year in a row of that, I don't know, man. I think that probably hurts a bit less than what it was, which was this felt like a really memorable small window of greatness kind of season that, and in a wet fart against Southern Miss. But
and just an aside, got to shout out one of my friends, Mike Brown, who at that game shaved BCS into the side of his head, and then we lost. So we also blame him in addition to Kevin Sumlin.
Didn't Mike get into the Chronicle? I don't know if he got on the front page.
Oh, he was on the Chronicle. He was on the Chronicle. He was on the front page of Yahoo Sport.
Yahoo Sport.
The front page, not just sports, where he was like Yahoo doing like in general. Yahoo front page was him with BCS shaved into the side of his head. Just like in like full, like not surrender, but just like that when you're like on the front row and you're just leaning over and just like pain. Which was an understandable reaction to that football game that we all three watched and have all three tried to forget probably for the last 12-ish years. Sorry, I just had to.
Gotta.
It wouldn't have been as heartbreaking had Mike not shaved BCS into his head and Sumlin left. It would have been better if we had done it the year before. You're right.
Yeah. And basically this morning the media floodgates open. Every national college football reporter was reporting that Fritz would be U of H's next head coach. Fritz ended up addressing his Tulane team this morning and is expected to be at U of H, I think in like, I'm doing the math here, like I think it said 7-ish to address the team. Yeah, I was like, I'm waiting for the tweet that's like, Willie Fritz has been delayed because of an accident on 59 or something like that. He's here. He's experienced issues. No, but yeah, and you've seen this morning Fritz
610-290 interchange. Ever since they redid it, it's a bitch, man.
Oh yeah. But so yeah, and you've seen Fritz is giving kind of an introductory quote. I think the press conference will be tomorrow, 11:30. I saw, right?
11:30. I think it might have been doors 11:30. Thing at noon.
Doors 11:30, 12.
But you've already seen like the various introductory quotes from Dr. Couture, from Chris Pesman, from Fritz, and so I think that covers everything from the past week or so. Did I miss anything, guys?
No, I think that's a pretty good timeline of how things went down.
So I wanted to start the discussion here. What excites each of you most about the Willie Fritz hire? And I'll start with you, Bobby.
Just that the guy just builds programs. Teams that he goes to, they hadn't seen much success before him. And then when he comes, he wins. And then when he leaves, the programs still win. Like, the guy doesn't just build winners with other guys' players or his guys, and then he leaves and everyone leaves with him and all that kind of stuff. Like, he builds winning programs that just continue to win even after he leaves. And one of the big concerns with Willie Fritz is his age. That's a big thing a lot of people were knocking him on, is how old Willie Fritz is. And if he's going to do that, if he's going to be here for the reported 5-year contract and he's going to retire after that, after 5 years at 68, that seems like a really logical thing to do. I have confidence that what he is going to do is bring us winners, and then he's going to put the program in a better situation than it was when he got here. I hate to bring this guy up a ton, but it felt like Herman did that too. Now, it didn't end up that way, right? But the program was in a better shape post Herman than it was before Herman got here. And I'm excited that Fritz does that kind of work everywhere he goes. I mean, Central Missouri, where he was, they have had 5 playoff appearances in their entire, since they've been around. They've had 5 playoff appearances at the Division II level. He's got one of them. And then the year after he left, they made another appearance. He's got almost half their appearances. Like, that's pretty good. Sam Houston. Before Willie Fritz, they had 3 playoff appearances. He had 3 in 4 years while he was there. And Sam Houston State hasn't looked back since. Sam Houston State's a national contender, or was when they were at the FCS level every year. They just were. And even then, it allowed them to transition to the FBS level. So he just builds winners. Georgia Southern, he oversaw their transition to FBS. Was it like the smoothest thing in the world? Not necessarily, right? They didn't step up, but I mean, he won his conference title the first year in FBS. That's pretty good, man. That's pretty good. Everyone was talking about James Madison this year, about how they went undefeated and how they should be able to play in a bowl and play in their conference championship game and all that. Willie Fritz did that. And look at Tulane. Tulane, terrible before they got there. And I know you guys have some stats on that. Terrible before he got there. And they're in a much better place than they were before he got there. So it's hard not to get excited about that. It's hard not to get excited about the fact that we have a coach who builds programs. He doesn't just build winning teams. He builds programs. That's what has me the most excited.
Yeah, I think what's exciting for me is just kind of like Bobby said, he builds programs, and he does it in what feels like such a sustainable, like reasonable way. You know, it's not like he's not going to programs and just being like, I'm the offensive guy. We're going to score 1 million points and hopefully the defense can keep up. And he's not, going the opposite direction of like, oh, we're going to have a lockdown defense and I'm just going to, forget about the offense and whatever happens. He's not I'm going to just, go through the portal and screw traditional high school recruiting. He's not darn kids these days and their player agency. Like he builds through the portal. He builds through high school recruiting. He's building the relationships with local coaches to do well in both phases. Has had success on both sides of the ball at Tulane. And kind of like you said, has won at every level up until this point. And sure, he's never coached at the power conference level before, but we can have a little bit of humility, right? We're Houston, right? We're not as much as we love to hire, Nick Saban or Kirby Smart or whoever, someone that's just been a dominant P5 head coach and is still on the upward trajectory. Those guys aren't applying to Houston. Like that's, we could either get a guy like a Gary Patterson or Barry Odom, whose last P5 stop was not so great, or we can try to latch onto someone who's still on an upward trajectory. And looking at the last 2 years that Tulane has had, it sure seems like Willie Fritz, despite being, we talk so much about Dana Holgerson. He's old. He's been around for a while. The game seems to have passed him by. Willie Fritz is older than Dana Holgorsen, but he very much seems like that is not happening. He is a guy who still seems like he is coaching his best football. He's someone who has, brought in young assistants to be his coordinators that have kind of kept him young and kept him open to new ideas. And I don't mean that just to be a jab at our former coach who very much didn't do that, but it kind of is, right? That's, you don't want to date a guy. You don't want to hire a coach or just because he's the opposite of your ex. You don't want to just date someone because they're the opposite of your ex. But, if your ex had a really toxic trait, like, that they just refuse to be open to new ideas, then yeah, you actually do want to go find someone that does the opposite of that. So, you guys kind of alluded to it where the last two hires Houston made, Major Applewhite and Dana Holgorsen. I'm not saying that they were hires that no one was excited about. I'm not saying that they were hires that even the two or three of us were like, I can see the pathway to this being a successful hire, but they were both hires that you kind of had to talk yourself into, like, oh, hey, we hired the coordinator who was coordinating by a significant margin the worst of our two game. That's okay. That's an interesting hire. We'll see if it works out. I can kind of talk myself into it, but I don't know.
He's got good relationships with high school coaches.
Bingo. That was the big one. Yep.
High school coaches all want to send their players to him. Ha ha ha.
And then what happened?
Yeah, right.
Joey McGuire's like, I'll definitely do that. I'm definitely not a week away from accepting a job on the Baylor staff, which he did after that stupid ass letter. Sorry.
And then Dana Holgorsen, same thing. I think it was exciting. It was exciting to poach a sitting P5 head coach. But I think even at the time, I remember us being like, okay, that's cool. But they were probably a year away from firing him, right? And that's not to say that he did a terrible job there. Just that that they have different expectations than the results that he was delivering. I'm sure there's some Dana apologists out there that would say the same thing happened at Houston, but either way, and again, not that 100%. If you just were in love with Traylor, you can find reasons to pick nits with Willie Fritz. If you were in love with Fritz, you can probably find reasons to pick nits with Jeff Traylor. But I think broadly speaking, either of those guys would have been, and Willie Fritz is a hire that requires very little convincing of the fan base to get on board. Mm-hmm. In a way that the last two just did not. And just like you guys said, really hasn't been the case since we brought Tom Herman on board, who I guess we're allowed to say his name again, but I thought it was like Voldemort where you weren't supposed to, but no, I guess it's okay. But no, I think it's
been seven years. I think we can do it. I think
I'm the new guy. If I broke a rule, that's on me, guys. That's on me.
No, it's all good. I think, that's it. It's just seeing the way that he's built programs in a way that feels like it can translate, and B, just the idea of this fan base having someone to rally around, of being able to go into year 2 of the Big 12 without the we're in the Big 12, but, because right. I mean, it kind of was going in and we're like, yeah, we're in the Big 12, but I don't think anyone really believes that this is the guy that's gonna lead us to Big 12 success. Again, I think Willie Fritz has got a lot on his plate to have to deal with, and it's a tall order, and I think we need to have realistic expectations in year 1 and 2 or whatever, things like that. But it's like I said, it's a hire that everyone should be really excited about, and it's gonna be good to have everyone pulling in the same direction in this school and this fan base again in a way that just didn't feel like it was the case previously.
Yeah, not surprisingly, Dustin and I have kind of a similar thing. I was going to give my answer here real quick, but I agree with everything you said, Bobby. I like that this guy is a winner, but he's somebody whose teams have won games a lot of different ways. He's not an option guy. He's not a defense guy. He's not an air raid guy. He's pragmatic, which I would say is an unbelievable strength. Like, you can't just say, unless you're like Nick Saban or Kirby Smart and you're in an incredibly resourced program, like, you can't say, well, and even Nick Saban, has opened his teams up offensively a lot, like the last 10 years. So even those guys are iterating, but you can't be someone like Dana who's just like, well, this is my way of winning, and we're going to take half the season with Tank Dell and Clayton Tune to figure out that maybe we should throw the ball more than we run it. Again, that's going to just stick in my craw till my dying day. I feel like, but I'll give you the best example. I mean, you kind of dived into Fritz's biography a bit, Bobby, but just point out, 2009, he was the head coach of Central Missouri. They went 8-3 that year, finished tied for second in their conference, a pretty good Division II conference, and their offense averaged a hair under 260 passing yards per game. At least for that era, that was like a pretty good, healthy average passing total. I know as U of H fans, it's kind of skewed because we just saw some absolutely absurd passing offenses before. Everyone's like, hey, the air raid's kind of cool. I think we were, as often has been the case in this program, U of H was kind of ahead of the curve offensively, but very much
and that was our old coach.
Yeah, I know. Believe me, has mentioned it a time or two on here that it's just like, over the past 5 years, it was just like, I can't believe this man was responsible for two of the best most fun U of H offenses that the three of us ever laid our eyes on. Offenses that made us love this program and just like really like this many years. Anyway.
Sorry to rehash that, but I just wanted to point out the beautiful irony of what was happening there.
I don't know if beautiful is the word I'd use for it, but it is certainly irony. But so he goes from that, he takes the head coaching job at Sam Houston. They switched to kind of a run first offense. By his second season there, they're 14-1 and averaging 256 rushing yards per game. That's like two very different ways to win football games. Like his Tulane teams went from being fairly run first when he first got there to the last 4 years of Michael Pratt, allowing Michael Pratt, a very good, talented signal caller, to show off his passing ability too. So I think that's an incredible strength that he's not going to come here and have like a really strong preconceived notion of, we absolutely have to square peg into a round hole here. He's going to, I'm confident that him and his staff are going to look at this team, and not saying they're going to win 12 to 13 games next year, but they're going to put a scheme around the guys that are on this roster that makes sense. Whether there's the talent there to do more than win 4 or 5 games, very much still to be answered there. But I think it's not going to be a situation like the last staff where we kept just being like, okay, but why are they doing this? Like, I realize these guys are professional football coaches who know more X's and O's and even the soft football stuff than the three of us do by a wide margin. But why do we continually do just dumb shit that doesn't result in points? And I feel like we're going to be doing less of that with this staff, and I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, at the I read a super interesting article that I sent you, Sam. Sorry, Dustin. And it goes into Willie Fritz's like method of winning and how he has all these different things that he talks about and all this stuff. And he's got a list of 39 coaching principles that he shared with the like American Coaches
It's a football scoop piece, right?
Yeah. And number 8, for a prime example for you guys, is do not be afraid of learning new things. And that it's going to be beautiful, hopefully, that he is willing to listen. And look at his coordinators from where he's been. He's never shown that he's scared of being challenged on something and learning new stuff and seeing what works and working on that kind of stuff. So that's really my big takeaway from that article was he has his core beliefs. It's what most coaches do, right? Take care of the football, control the running game. I love that he says great special forces, not special teams.
Yeah.
And then he has eliminate pre-snap and post-play penalties, which is something we didn't do a very good job of before, right? And he calls that the wave don't beat the wave. So it's probably going to be Cougs don't beat Cougs or something like that, where those are things that you can help, right? You get called for a holding, it happens, right? You get called for pass interference, it happens. Wave don't beat the wave, and then win the fourth quarter. I mean, those are his 5 things, his plans to win. Hard not to get excited about those. Those are 5 things that a lot of coaches preach, but then he backs it up with these 39 coaching principles. And look, I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's a lot of good stuff in that list, including what you said, Dustin. Don't be afraid to learn new things.
This is I was Dustin, go.
I was going to say, I think one of the things that's so exciting to me is just, I'd like to think that as much as we continually acknowledge that, these people know more about football than us, when you look at like I think we do a decent job of, on social media or otherwise, just kind of paying attention to what a lot of the smart people that are paying attention to college football have to think and have to say. And it's hard to find one of those people that's not a Willie Fritz fan. It seems like a lot of the people that you just like, that guy seems to have his pulse on what's going on. That guy seems like he kind of knows the lay of the land. They all like this hire. They're all like, oh yeah, that's about as good of a hire as Houston could have made. And then, I kind of was texting you guys about it. I think I actually tweeted it, but just, you look at all the, again, I don't know how much this matters. It wins us no games. It gains us no yards. But the fact that the fans of every other Big 12 school besides Houston seem to be like, crap. Like that's a good hire for Houston. Like I don't hate it, and that's, again, does that genuinely help us at all? No, but I think there is something to the wisdom of crowds. There's popular hires that don't play out. There's unpopular hires that do pan out. But we've kind of seen this where, with like coordinator hires, we keep joking, there's coordinator hires where you hire this guy and his old fan base is like, okay, yeah, sure, go ahead. And there's coordinator hires where the other fan base is like, no, yeah, that's a good hire. It kind of does feel like there's something to that. So the fact that this was a guy that Tulane was willing to pay this guy $4.5 million a year. The Tulane University athletic department was somehow going to find $4.5 million per year.
And an increased assistant pool, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. To offer this guy to stay. Like, that's how bad Tulane wanted him. Plenty of other schools either, wanted him or at least wanted him to not be in their conference. So they didn't have to face him on a regular basis. This is a guy that it seems like the college football establishment knows that this is a smart hire. And, again, you got to wait until it plays out, and you never know how things are going to go. But I don't know, just the fact that you have a hard time finding people that don't think this is a good hire just makes you go, okay, it's not just the three of us looking at his resume and getting excited. This is just the people that are in the know, the people that know more than us seem like they also are seeing the same things we are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go the rest of the Big 12 and be like, you had your one chance to beat us. We're now going to be a championship team in the next 4 years. I think there's a big gulf between what U of H has now and what it needs to be a Big 12 championship team. But I have a hard time seeing Willie Fritz not at least turning this into a pain in the butt to play middle of the Big 12 team.
Yep.
Is that where we want to be destination wise? Not like every single year. I think we'd like to have at least like a cycle of every 4 or 5 years. This team is in serious contention and is decent in the remaining years. But just have a hard time not seeing Willie Fritz do that. And just again, this league got the one season of this program being just an utter train wreck. And I don't think it's going to be, I think Fritz has some work to do here. We got to see what kind of roster he'll have. A lot of unknowns right now here, less than 5 hours after the hire became official and public. But I think it's just hard not to see this program being a program that has its stuff a lot more together than it was under Dana previously, and probably the staff before that as well. I was going to go through the bio real quick, guys. I know we've kind of touched on it some, and I think we've hit like the higher points in previous episodes when we've kind of brought up Willie Fritz as a candidate or potential future guy. But you guys good if I go through a quick Willie Fritz bio for everyone? Feel free to jump in if you have oh yeah, like I saw this too, and I have this insight. Feel free to cut me off at any point here. So, quick bio of Willie Fritz, son of a Midwest small college head coach and administrator, the late Harry Fritz. I thought it was kind of cool. He actually ended up coaching at the same school where his dad had his 1 year total as a head football coach, Central Missouri. Previously played D2 ball at Pittsburgh State and Kansas. Once his career ended, coached in a variety of smaller college defensive assistant jobs. His final assistant job was actually 2 seasons as Sam Houston special teams coordinator and DB's coach. That helped him get the job at Blinn before the 1993 season at junior college level. Stepped into a program that had won 5 games in the prior 3 seasons before he got there. In 4 seasons there, won 39 games, including 2 national titles in his final 2 years there. Helmed this team's by quarterback Michael Bishop, who ended up being a late 90s era star for K-State. In 13 seasons at Central Missouri, his next job at the Division II level, starting in 97, he had 11 winning seasons. Led the program to its first postseason game of any kind in 32 years, excuse me. 2002, took the program to its first ever Division II playoff berth. He would leave after the 2009 season, but like you mentioned, Bobby, his fingerprints very much on a 2010 playoff team that was coached by his OC, or his previous OC, Jim Swoboda. Took over at Sam Houston in 2010. After 2 previous assistant stints there in Huntsville, had a modest first year, but then in his second and third seasons, the Bearcats went 25-5 and went to the FCS national title game both seasons, where they lost both seasons to Juggernaut North Dakota State. I watched a fair amount of those playoff runs on ESPNU in 2011 and 2012. Just an incredibly fun, beautiful run first spread offense to watch. A lot of it, they had this really incredible, I think he's still playing in Canada, actually, a dynamic running back named Timothy Flanders, rushed for well over 3,000 yards and 40 touchdowns in those 2 seasons where they went to the national title game. Up there really with those early 2000s to, I guess, mid 2000s West Virginia offenses with Steve Slayton and Pat White. Just incredibly explosive and fun, but doing it through the ground game as opposed to what we were used to as Cougar fans, the passing game. Made the playoffs his last season there and finished number 14 in the FCS top 25, but exited in the second round of the playoffs that year. He takes the job at Georgia Southern, who themselves were kind of a late 20th century, early 21st century FCS power. They were, when he got there, in the process of transitioning up to Division I FBS, the highest level of college football. And again, program with a ton of FCS history, and they weren't doing badly when Fritz got there. I mean, their coach got hired away by Army and has been fairly successful there, Jeff Monken, but they were a 7-4 FCS team the year before he got there. So it wasn't necessarily a team that was like ticketed to go to the next level and immediately be successful. And no biggie, he just goes 8-0 against Sunbelt opponents that year. Had two really close losses in non-conference play to Georgia Tech and NC State as well. They weren't bowl eligible that season, but he got them to their first bowl in program history the next year. They went 8-4, left before their bowl game for the Tulane job, who Tulane gave him a pretty sizable raise and increase in salary pool. Where does that sound familiar here now? But took probably longer at Tulane to build than maybe the other places, though. It was kind of a trip back down memory lane, because it's weird, Dustin. We've been doing this podcast long enough that I'm just like, oh yeah, I remember us facing that team since we started doing the show. Yeah, I remember that nightmarish 2017 U of H game in New Orleans against Willie Fritz's second year there. I think that was one of their, not that U of H was any great shakes in 2017, but that was one of their first, like, okay, wow, like they actually beat one of the bigger names in conference. Maybe this guy is serious. And they actually should have been bowling that second year. You might remember this one, Dustin. Jonathan Banks, their quarterback. I remember watching this game.
Hashtag Banks was in.
Banks was in. I was actually house sitting for my parents back in Houston. It was actually after I'd moved, just after, but I was house sitting for them. And I was watching that final week's games, and Tulane SMU was close. I'm like, up on Tulane SMU, and like very clearly got in for the touchdown. But the call on the field was that he was out, but before the end zone, the review some fucking how said, yeah, no, he was out. Which again, anyone with two eyes could have seen this guy like got the touchdown. That would have been Tulane bowling in Fritz's second year. So I say it was a slower build there, but like it didn't take that guy that long to get them a level of decent that we really just hadn't seen previously from that program in many years of them being a conference opponent. From 2018 to 2020, he took Tulane to 3 straight bowl games. I believe first in program history, right? They'd only ever gone to back-to-back prior to that.
And only back-to-back once, back in the 79 and 80.
Yeah, and during that same period, that was the last time, 79 to 81, that Tulane had 3 straight non-losing seasons, which, again, I'm not trying to take pot shots at Tulane football on a day where Tulane football lost their most transformative head coach in the last 40 years, but Tulane football was very bad before Willie Fritz got there more years than that. They had a 12-0 season in 1998 under Tommy Bowden, who promptly took the Clemson job, and they had some a bowl season here or there, but just a pretty woebegone football program. And yeah, even I will say the Green Wave did take a step back in 2021. They went 2-10, but I feel like some very important context there is that Hurricane Ida hit Louisiana literally the week before the football season. Tulane had to spend over a month living and playing away from New Orleans. And I remember in week 1, they pushed Oklahoma to the absolute brink.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think that season is illustrative of anything other than just how much it sucks to live through the after effects of a hurricane, and just how thin the margins could be, or delicate the margins could be at a job like Tulane, where just it's not as much of a given that you consistently win. And just incredible bounce back season in 22. Multi-year starting quarterback Michael Pratt, who had been good even when the Wave struggled the prior 2 seasons, really took a step up. I think they did a better job putting I think the supporting cast around him developed a bit more. Tyjae Spears, their running back, ended up becoming just one of the better players we've seen in the AAC in recent memory. They had kind of a team of destiny vibe. I remember after they, again, not to bring up more bad Cougar football memories, but I remember after they beat us with their 3rd string quarterback in overtime, I was just like, I wasn't like at that point, like, oh, I'm predicting Tulane's going to go to the Cotton Bowl and beat USC, but it was just kind of like, this doesn't feel like the game that Tulane used to win. To beat us without Michael Pratt, and to find a way to win these kinds of, tough, close games. I think Dana Holgorsen and his staff showed that at times they were very capable of doing that. And that team certainly did that a fair amount last season. They went to Manhattan, Kansas, and beat the eventual Big 12 champions, K-State. Only lost once in conference. It's like a 1 touchdown, one to UCF, who they ended up beating by 3 scores in the American Championship game. Really cathartic moment for that program, hosting the conference championship game and beating one of the departing teams there. And obviously a really incredible multi-score late comeback to beat USC and Caleb Williams in the Cotton Bowl as well. And I think U of H fans can understand as well as any fan base how hard the season after the big season was. Case in point, all of our seasons after the big season this century. And that Tulane went out there. I think it wasn't as sexy this year. You didn't have Tyjae Spears. He was playing for the Titans this season, lost some key defensive guys as well. Went 11-1 in the regular season, and that only one loss was playing Ole Miss with their backup quarterback because Michael Pratt was out hurt. I think even though Tulane didn't get and they lost their DC Chris Hampton as well. He took a job on the Oregon staff. I think it would have been very easy for Tulane with a target on their back this past season to have dropped a couple of those close games. It was just clearly a very mentally tough team. And again, I think I wouldn't say luck, but I think it kind of ran out against an SMU team that is a lot more resourced and talented than them, even without their starting quarterback. So that's the Willie Fritz bio right there. Did I miss any important nuggets that you guys may have had?
No, I think you pretty much got it. It's kind of funny. I hadn't really thought about this or made this comparison in my mind, but it kind of came out as I was listening to you describe Willie Fritz's bio. Is he kind of feels like we're hiring David Rare, like not when we hired David Rare, but like
the Blinn Jr. Yeah.
Right.
Like the Blinn Junior College thing actually got me thinking that, and we also,
they both coached at Blinn. They both kind of were just moving up a level, just winning everywhere they went. And you look at Fritz's, run of success at Tulane, taking over a program like Rare did with our volleyball program that really never had any kind of level of success, was coming off just a bunch of bad years in a row. And put in the work for the first few years to kind of build that program up to respectability. And then the last 2 years really paying off, same as the last 2 years have really paid off for Coach Rarely in the volleyball program to a couple of NCAA tournaments and 3 NCAA tournament wins over the last 2 seasons. So yeah, I hadn't really put that comparison together until as you were talking just now, Sam. But I don't know, that analogy only makes me even more excited about the hire because, man, if you're looking at this is going to be similar to hiring Coach Rare. That's a pretty lofty comparison, and
I'll take it.
And something I would love him to emulate the kind of success that Coach Rare has had.
Yeah, no, I really like that comparison.
Yeah, no, it's a great comparison and just a fun little. I don't know how fun this is, but looking back, it's kind of fun. I didn't put 2 and 2 together till somebody, I can't remember who on Twitter did it. So if it was you, I apologize for not shouting you out, but thank you for this. The fake spike or the fake kneel that Jesus Tulane Christ. Did against us.
2019.
That was Willie Fritz, and that's what led to all the red shirting and all the disaster of what eventually became the Dana Holgorsen era. And Fritz did it to us, and it just is like, oh, okay, cool.
I think I saw some, he's been looking at this job a long time. He was playing the long game. He was just like, okay, I went to a bowl last year. I think I need a couple more seasons. I'm gonna play the long game. I'm gonna permanently nerf this fan base's
belief in this coach in the first season.
Very good.
And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my backup quarterback get injured on the first drive, and then I'm going to crush their hopes and dreams with a third string quarterback. That's what I'm going to do. And then the next year I'll get the job.
I'm going to make my opposing head coach so mad that he may or may not have screamed obscenities at fans booing him at the club level.
There's no may or may not have. I saw the video.
I know.
Man.
Well, you know what? Say Willie Fritz is not going to, I guarantee you, wins and losses, stuff like that, way too volatile to predict now. And we don't know who's going to be in this roster next year. Don't know what his staff looks like. Don't know a lot of things at this juncture. I know we're not going to come back on here and talk about Willie Fritz at a press conference, be like, I ain't taking responsibility for that. Or just being
saying
like,
I can't coach this shit.
Yeah. I'm not as much as I may or may not put that at the end of our show here. As much as we have all gotten collectively quick aside, I'm not going to I laughed for a solid 2 minutes when I finally, cause my dumb self deleted that outro in a, I don't know why, to make space. 5-second audio thing is on our Dropbox. I don't know, but I'm the only one that ever deletes stuff. So it had to have been me. So I was like, oh my God, this intro is lost to history. But then I remembered we used it in the UConn game, and I went and listened to the end of the episode where you and I recapped the UConn game, Dustin, and my part. And I'm just I'm just pumping my fists yes when I hearing it in my headphones. I'm like, it's not lost to time. We truly found it. So, very, very satisfying moment there. I hold many things against Dana Holgorsen. We'll hold them against him for a long time. I will not hold against him on a hot mic, and that just absolutely atrocious football game against UConn in 2019 cursing at that football product, because I think I was at home in San Marcos cursing at that football product at the TV.
I think at his son, wasn't he? 'Cause wasn't it?
Yeah,
It was,
that's
it
what I
was,
was
it was
gonna
a
say
Logan Holgerson multiple yards beyond the line of scrimmage penalty.
Yeah.
And that was actually the only game that's ever been won by a quarterback. And I'm using in the loosest sense of the word, recruited, as in came into the program from high school under Dana Holgerson. I believe that was the only one, unless Logan won another game in 2019 that I've memory hold. So
God, I'm so glad it's over, boys.
I mean,
so
at least
glad
at least some of it was
era-
funny. But yeah, you're not gonna see Willie Fritz out there like screaming at the club level if I don't know if the Donovan Smith offense next year isn't to everyone's liking. Like, you're gonna see this man comport himself as more of a head coach and representative of the university better than Dana ever did. That's the thing I feel most confident about. Does that win football games? Does him comporting himself well make me really excited? No, it's all the other stuff. It's the winning, it's the history and what have you. But I think that's a definite positive for this program moving forward. So I guess I gotta talk about, I mean, we don't know that much right now. We have no idea. It's Sunday. It's 4:19 y'all's time. We don't know who's going in the portal. The portal officially opens tomorrow, but you'd assume he's bringing over some Tulane assistants here. You assume he's not going to go full scratch new staff here, but exactly who, we're not sure. Iman Nagavi coached under him actually last year at Tulane, has a multi-year deal here. He seems like a good candidate to stay on, not just because of the multi-year deal, but because he oversaw a very, very successful Tulane running game his final season there. And as we've seen with some assistants that have left here, you know, like Brandon Jones didn't forget how to coach the offensive line. He coached the offensive line for Missouri's probably best team since they've gotten into the SEC this year. Like, we've seen a lot of times where it's like, maybe Dana Holgerson was the problem here. Like, maybe it wasn't just like, oh, this guy, you know, I'm not willing to fully like retcon my thoughts on Shannon Dawson, because I think he has several schools worth of data that this guy isn't anything other than at best an average coordinator, and oftentimes worse than that. But I'd be okay with keeping Nagavi around. I think a lot of Cougar fans, I think all three of us included, would be happy to see Brian Early still kept around. He's done a very good job developing defensive linemen here. Somebody who's connected in a way with the fan base that no other person involved in a staff position of the Dana Holgerson era has. Unless I'm forgetting somebody here. Like, I really don't think anyone's had that kind of bond with the fan base. I think he'd be a popular guy to have back. And I'm mentioning even though I think he's a good assistant. I think he'll land somewhere on his feet, but I think Da'Keel Shorts was the other assistant that was on a multi-year deal. And I think he's done a good job recruiting and developing at the receivers position. But I would also say he's someone very much tied to Holgerson. He played for Holgerson at West Virginia, was an assistant, was a staffer at West Virginia and Houston, and then got elevated to an on-field position here. So somebody very tied to the previous staff who I feel like would be a lot less likely to stick around for largely be new staff here. So I guess I'll pass this off to you guys by saying, I mean, if you have specific names, like, go ahead, absolutely. But like, what are you generally looking for in Fritz's U of H staff coming up?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, I mean, I'd love, kind of like you, I'd love to see him keep Nagavi, which makes sense because, like I said, he's I believe Joseph Duarte was reporting, or like you said, Sam, the only assistant coaches whose deals extended past this year were Nagavi and Shorts, which is kind of funny with Nagavi's being one of them. It's like, I don't know if we can talk Willie Fritz into giving Iman Nagavi an interview to stay on with as the offensive line coach. Oh, we might actually be able to do that given that they were working together a year ago. And kind of like you, I'd love to see Early back, but it's obviously the multi-million-dollar question is going to be like, who are the coordinators going forward? And that's, I think Willie Fritz is someone who has made a lot of his success by bringing in intelligent coordinators and learning from them and working together. So that's going to be a huge part of his success here is who he's able to attract. So, there's a lot of things, a lot of like, kind of like I alluded to, a lot of tasks that Willie Fritz has in front of him in terms of recruiting Houston's own players back to stay with the program. Because I believe as of, again, 4/23 on December 3rd, the only U of H players that have entered the portal are defensive back Moses Alexander, wide receiver Dalton Carnes, and walk-on quarterback Jet Huff. So again, it's anytime you have a program that's not real successful, you want to make guys fight for spots, right? But there are definitely talented players on this roster with eligibility back. Even the the most cynical Cougar football fan, I think, acknowledges that there's plenty of guys that you would love to see stick around and try to fight for a spot and work with the new coaching staff. So definitely intrigued to see what he's able to do in terms of getting guys back, what he's able to do in terms of proactively bringing new players in through the portal. But huge part of it, like you said, it's the coaching composition too. So again, I'm not sure. I should have done a little more prep this episode to know like who his coordinators were at Tulane this year and if it seems likely that they'll come over. But I think now that we know that we got the head coach, that is the next like multi-million-dollar question though, is okay, who are his coordinators going to be coming into next year? Because we've seen the last 2 years how much coordinators matter, and that you got the wrong guy, it can make the whole thing come crumbling down. You bring someone in that's just kind of a yes man, it can make the whole thing kind of come crumbling down. So definitely keen-eyed and don't yet have the short list of guys the way that we kind of did for head coach right away in terms of who I'd like to see. But going to be very intrigued to see what are the names he's able to pull. And we saw U of H with Dana, even when we were still in the American, saying, hey, we're not only going to pony up the money to get Dana here, we're gonna pony up the money for a pretty hefty assistant salary pool as well. And you'd like to think that part of Willie Fritz making the decision to come to U of H as quickly as he did was that U of H gave him assurances that they were gonna be able to do that for him as well, and be able to sufficiently pay his assistants to bring in the guys that he wants as well. So but yeah, that's definitely the next multi-million-dollar question is who are those coordinators coming in? And would love to see Early and Nagabi as well, but I think certainly first and foremost it's who's your OC and your DC.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here on this podcast and act like I'm some guru who knows everything about G5 coordinators that are performing at a high level. I'm not going to be that guy. Like Dustin said, it is the $1 million question of who do we bring in, and then from there I can kind of go, oh, okay, here's this name that I know, and let's go look at the stats following him. But he's got to get this done pretty quick, man. He's got to. I would imagine if you are in the situation he's in, wanting to hold off until after your team plays in the conference game, wanting to do all that, you have made some calls, right? You've at least sent an email to a couple of coordinators that you want to come with you, whether that's your guys at Tulane, whether it's somebody you worked with at Georgia Southern or something like that. Like you have a pretty good idea of guys that you want to bring in, and you've probably already had those discussions. Like you said, Dustin, portal opens tomorrow. You got to start figuring this stuff out. We've talked long and hard about how our recruiting class is very thin this year, only 8 recruits, not ranked very high. You're going to have to get the help in the transfer portal. And like we said, it opens tomorrow. You got to get on them. You got to get on it early. You got to start talking to guys as soon as possible. And so I think that's the $1 million question is, who are these coordinators? You've already thought about him. There's no way he's not on the plane right now, flying to Houston, just sitting there going, oh man, this is really cool. I'm just hanging out. Like, I firmly believe that he is making phone calls, sending emails, sending texts going, hey, you ready to come to Houston? The discussions have already, I believe discussions have already happened. And, like you said, Dustin, he's done a really good job of having coordinators leave, and he still seems to be successful in picking out guys. So I have a lot of confidence that he's going to do a good job with that.
I'll just mention a few names, either Tulane or recently Tulane guys. One of them I think for sure, Bobby. We actually talked about this guy in passing on our premium show. Slade Nagel, their offensive coordinator, has been on Willie Fritz's staff since he got there and has been their play caller the last 2 seasons. Two very good and very pragmatic offenses with Michael Pratt there. I think could see him come along, but I believe he is Tulane's interim head coach, so I don't know, that might hold things up. Who knows there? Chris Hampton was a defensive coordinator last season as a co-DC at Oregon. I'm curious, with a bigger possible salary to give and the chance to be like, okay, shared duties under a defensive head coach in Dan Lanning versus like, hey, you can come here and this is your defense. Like you can you can have that. You can run your own Power 5 defense. Yeah. And just guy with a really good rep as a recruiter at Tulane as well. Chris Hampton and their current defensive coordinator, Shile Wood, I'd be very excited about as well. They gave up less than 19 points a game this year. Tulane did. He was also Troy's defensive coordinator when they were very, very good in the 2022 season. Oversaw some really good defenses at Army and other Group of 5 and FCS teams as well. Like, fits very much the profile of like guy who's coordinated good defenses wherever he's gone. I think not unlike Todd Orlando when he came in here, because it was like, okay, I didn't watch any of the Utah State 2014 defense when Todd Orlando got here, but I did a good scan of the guy's resume, and it's like, damn, everywhere this guy goes, like, he produces good defenses and produces good defenses at places that aren't like necessarily like, okay, well, that program's always going to be at a talent advantage their opponents. Like, it Wood very much has that kind of resume as well. So no inside info there, but Slade Nagel, Chris Hampton, and Shile Wood are just some early names I'm keeping an eye on for the coordinator spots here, and would be surprised if he doesn't at least bring a few on-field assistants. And you know how it is now, like the off-field staff is just magnitudes larger than ever has been. So I'm sure there'll be off-field staff, recruiting, and what have you, people coming from Tulane, strength and conditioning as well. I'm sure we'll see a fair amount of off-field staff as well. But yeah, no, exciting to talk about, guys. So much more exciting to talk about than what has been most of the last 5 years of Houston Cougar football. I think we all appreciate that, but I hope today, like, everyone just appreciates what a better place Houston Cougar football almost certainly will be than if we had given Dana Holgorsen another year. And, you know, I'm not saying we couldn't have made a good hire after 2024, but it's just, again, I'm just glad the administration ripped the Band-Aid off, and, you know, we're going into a new era of Cougar football, an era where I feel like everyone's kind of back on the same page again.
Yeah, and I think once you get
Absolutely.
the coaching thing figured out, there is a lot of personnel decisions that then become real key as well. Because I'm talking about the portal opens up, that means both players both ways. That's another area where you might see, you know, like it's kind of a dirty business, but you might see players coming over from Tulane as well. Certainly, all the U of H players are going to have to decide if they fit well in the new system or not. You know, I think the most obvious choice is you know, right away is Donovan Smith your choice for 2024 quarterback? I think that's a decision that Willie Fritz is going to have to come in and make real quickly. I think certainly there's plenty of positions that we kind of know have to be shored up. Offensive line to be one of those, you know, defense broadly, kind of probably every position on the defense. You're hoping to bring in guys from the portal as well. So portal season going to get real interesting real quick. And I mean, obviously that's obviously very much tied to who you bring in as your assistants as well, because that, you know, there's the whole recruiting piece there. So, yeah, I don't know. The next month or so is going to be, really, really interesting in terms of finding out, you know, what kind of assistance is Willie Fritz able to bring over, and then B, what kind of transfers is he able to bring over. And, you know, furthermore, C, is he entirely given up on the class of 2024 high school recruiting, or is he already have some guys in mind, maybe some guys that he's kind of been recruiting, but, you know, are a little unsure of going to go play in the American, and all of a sudden you get to call those recruits and be like, hey, you know, you want to come play? Did you believe in me as a coach, but you didn't want to go play at the non-power conference level? Good news, I'm in the Big 12 now. So, you know, is he able to kind of salvage something out of this 2024 high school recruiting class as well? Obviously, that's one area that's not going to make an immediate impact in the 2024 season, most likely. It's hard to imagine him really going out and getting too many guys that are going to be instant impact freshmen that are coming in right away. But I mean, hey, this is the guy who was a JUCO coach for a long time. I'm sure he's not going to be afraid to go the JUCO route. He's shown
Can probably do that more here than Tulane also. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's shown at Tulane that he was unafraid to go the transfer route as well. So yeah, just real intrigued. And it goes again. We keep talking about it, but you go all of a sudden from this off season of like, this is gonna be a long off season, just waiting for another like disappointing football season, and just
11 months of running out the clock on Dana Holgorsen, honestly.
Exactly, as opposed to now where all of a sudden it's like, okay, yeah, it's he's got a lot of questions to answer. He's got a lot of shoes to fill, or, you know, holes to fill, whatever the case may be. But it's going to be a lot more entertaining off season than we were dialed in for. And, you know, that's, you know, you can't ask, you talk about this a lot. You can't ask every program to be where men's basketball is right now, right? You gotta, for each program we're fans of at U of H, you gotta kind of define success a little bit differently depending on the history of that program, the last couple of years of that program, where you're at. And all you want to see is figure out, you know, what's a step forward for this program, what's a step in the right direction. And again, thought we were going into an off season where it was going to be very much just like best case scenarios, kind of spinning your wheels and ending up back where we were. To all of a sudden, okay, it's like I said, not to keep making the rare comparison, but we just saw this graduating class with all these impactful seniors who have spent the last 5 years laying the foundation. Right now, Willie Fritz has got to go out and figure out who are the guys that are going to help me lay that foundation. Because 2024, hopefully, not going to be Willie Fritz's most successful season at U of H. If it is, that's either he's going to be the national coach of the year next year, or that means that he's flamed out and not done that good of a job. So, just excited to see who he's bringing in that's going to help, like I said, build the foundation of success that we want to see this program have, that Willie Fritz and everyone thinks that he can have here.
He's got to find the quarterback equivalent of Abby Jackson.
Right.
No pressure.
Who's your Abby Jackson at quarterback, or Andy Cook, I guess, because the setter's the quarterback.
That's true. Yeah.
But we'll see.
I was gonna say real quick before we I think it's worth grounding. We're very excited. We're all very excited for good reason. If you're listening, you should be excited about Willie Fritz being the Houston Cougar football head coach. The reality of next year's football schedule is going to be difficult. Like UNLV looked like a pretty easy one. Team that just won 9 games. Yes, were there some they beat 9 not very good teams, but we could be not very good team next year. So that's especially week 1 of Willie Fritz. That's a rough one. Even though I'm sure UNLV, I'm sure Brandon Marion, they're not going to get a season 2 of him just because of how in demand his services are. Then at OU after that. As much as OU has looked maybe a little more vulnerable than OU historically, I don't know, man. I don't know if 2 weeks into Willie Fritz, we're going to have a team that's capable of doing more than maybe giving a good puncher stance. Really, for me, the first test of the Willie Fritz era is going to be I think it's week 3. It's the third non-conference game against Rice. And just seeing, because, again, I am somebody who is going to be perpetually skeptical of Mike Bloomgren and his achievements there, but factually, this is their first bowl team that didn't get to a bowl because they were good at school in 8 or 9 years at Rice. They'll be coming off their best season in a good long while. They've actually gotten a chance to, because JT Daniels got hurt and is now medically retired from football, they actually got a chance to kind of figure out their quarterback position post JT Daniels. So that in week 3 for me is going to be that first real test. I want the Cougars to go out there and fucking avenge that really just unpleasant game at Rice Stadium this past season. I don't think that's asking too much of Willie Fritz. Not that I'm going to jump off the Willie Fritz. God forbid, I don't even want to speak into existence a second straight Bayou bucket loss. I'm not going to jump off Willie Fritz there, but I think that's your first chance to be okay, at home, take care of business against a team that you really, even this year with all of the Cougars' flaws, should have taken care of business against. Okay, that's good. We're back somewhere. We're in a better place than we were, even if this team is going to look a lot different. And then in conference, you got Baylor at home, pretty winnable. None of the other conference home games feel especially winnable. Iowa State, as good as they look this year. Not that that's a team that's going to run 40 or 50 points on us, but that looks like a lot more competent team than us this year. K-State, going to be really tough. Utah, going to be really tough. And you get 5 road games: Arizona, BYU, Cincy, Kansas, and TCU. And Cincy and BYU maybe weren't the best this year, but again, neither were we. So don't feel especially confident about those either. So yeah, I would say be excited about the Willie Fritz hire, but remember that this is going to be a tough 2024 season ahead of us.
Yeah. Be excited about the Willie Fritz hire because he's a program builder and we've got a program in need of building. So
exactly.
You got to be a little bit realistic about where you are and what year 1 is going to look like. And I think we talked about this. I think, was it right when Dana got fired? We said, whoever comes in, you got to give him a year 0. And I think you kind of do. I think I would love to see Willie Fritz have some level of success right away. I'd love to think that he could maybe even get us to a bowl game right away, which I think would be a fantastic accomplishment. But, I think you do got to give him probably until maybe the 2025 season before you really start, judging him on the wins and the losses.
Yeah, I think you can be excited, but also kind of tamp down those expectations. Honestly, if we said a lot of the problems we had this year is we weren't competitive, we may go 4-8 again next year, but I feel like there's a chance we're going to look better. Right. And we even said the Holgerson thing, if he went 4-8, but he looked competitive in games, we would be okay with it. I think next year we may go 4-8. So don't jump off the bandwagon if the Cougs are 2-6 at some point or something like that. Like, remember, this guy builds programs and it may take him a year or two, but you're going to see more competitive football. You're going to see better football, worse than just watching bad football. And that's what we've been watching the last couple of years. And I feel like we're going to compete in some games that we probably shouldn't compete in. We're going to take teams down to the wire, and our wins aren't going to require a Hail Mary and an overtime quarterback keeper to win in the Big 12. I think we may, Baylor, some of the teams that moved with us, we're going to be more competitive against those guys.
It's a good place to end it.
All right, perfectly. Well, on their way out, as always, encourage you, if you enjoy Scott and One podcast on a regular basis, you feel like you can afford $5 a month, patreon.com/SH podcast. You can sign up to throw a few bucks our way, get access to some bonus content, and get the good karma of supporting your favorite Cougar podcasters. I would also love you to, if you enjoy the podcast, and you can't afford $5 a month, go whatever app you're listening to this on, give us a 5-star rating. That'll certainly help us get the word out there as well. We would love for you to get in contact with us. You can email us, shpodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet at us at shpodcast, or you can follow us on Blue Sky at podcast.bsky.social. So that's it for us. If you made it all the way to the end, Merry Fritzmas to you. And as always,
Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
Vamos los Cougs.
Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
I can't coach this shit.